أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه الأخيار أما بعد. بإذن الله we continue with our explanation on the text of Burdatul Madih of al-Imam al-Busiri, and we last stopped on the al-Fasl al-Khamis, and so inshallah we continue with the al-Fasl al-Sadis. May Allah strengthen us and enable us to flow through and complete this blessed book smoothly. It says Al-Faslu Sadis fi Sharaf al-Quran al-Karimi wa Madhihi. The chapter 6 is talking about the honor of the Quran, the virtue of the Quran, the noble Quran, and its praise. So it's going to talk some descriptions about the Quran and as well praise the Quran. So he says, دعني ووصفي آيات له ظهرت ظهور نار القرى ليلا على علمي. Said دعني يعني دع from ودع بالدال ودع بمعنى to leave, to let alone. Says دعني leave me alone ووصفي آيات يعني leave me alone to describe verses له ظهرت أي للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ظهرت أي ظهرت هذه الآيات للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Leave me alone, let me describe verses that were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. ظهور نار القرى. These verses, they appeared like the way the fire that is set to welcome a guest appears laylan at night ala alami, upon the mountain. Alam, I think we've met it before in one of the verses, in one of the abiyat before. Alam bimana jabal. So he says that, so as well the ayat here, since it is the Quran we are talking about, is specifically the verses of the Quran, but then as well the ayat, every other ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam of miracles and all that, every other sign. Just leave me alone, let me describe verses that were revealed or verses that appeared to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way the nar al-kira. Al-kira, as we've said, we've met it before. Al-kira is the preparations you do to welcome a guest. When a guest is coming to you, you set fire, you put some food there. All that is called kira. Okay, so the Arab regions, those who used to live on highlands, normally at night when you are moving, they are always expecting a guest. Yani any guest can come in anytime, and so they will set a fire up there to show you that there is food available when you come here. Yani dalala ala al-karam. It is a proof for their generosity. Maybe not today, but still there are some that are extremely generous. They just set the fire for you. It's a symbol to show you that our doors are open, not just open, but then there is food. So when they set that fire, then you are walking on the desert at night, you see it clearly. I think it will be one of the most clear thing you can ever see, or the clearest thing you can ever see. That is why he used that as the tashbih here. The ayat appeared very clear, like the way that nar al-qira appears on top of the mountain. Then he says, فَالدُّرُّ يَزْدَادُ حُسْنًا وَهُوَ مُنْتَظِمٌ وَلَيْسَ يَنْقُصُ قَدْرًا غَيْرَ مُنْتَظِمِ. Says الدُّرُّ, pearls, gems and jewels. يَزْدَادُ حُسْنًا, the beauty of a pearl increases. وَهُوَ مُنْتَظِمٌ, when you have put it in a chain. Yani when you take pearls, valuable stones, and just the stone like that, it's beautiful. It's very beautiful. But yazdad husnan, the beauty increases when you are able to fix some metal, carve some metal and fix that stone in there to make a nice ring, to make a watch, to make something. It increases its beauty when it is muntazim, when it is well put. وَلَيْسَ يَنْقُصُ قَدْرًا, but then it doesn't reduce, its value doesn't reduce, غَيْرَ مُنْتَظِمِ, when it is not put in that order. When you find it right from where you mine it from, whether in the mountains, whether in the sea, down the sea, you find that pearl, it is beautiful in itself. But when it is muntazim, it is more beautiful. What is he comparing to the al-Durr here? The ayat of the Quran. The ayat of the Quran is perfectly arranged. There is no way you can rearrange any verse to make it look better. So it's most beautiful. Even when you take it out of order, it's still beautiful. It doesn't reduce its beauty. And then he says, فَمَا تَطَاوُلُ آمَالِ الْمَدِيحِ إِلَى مَا فِيهِ مِنْ كَرَمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ وَالشِّيَمِ. Here he is reproaching himself that he has taken up to describe the verses of the Quran to praise it. Then he says, how impudent of the hopes of the one praising towards what is in the Quran, ما فيه أي ما في القرآن من كرم الأخلاق, with regards to noble traits, noble behavior, noble characters. والشيم, and traits, noble characters and traits. من كرم الأخلاق, noble characters. والشيم, and traits. So he's now kind of reproaching himself. Yani, how dare you? How dare you take it up to go and describe the verses of the Quran and praise it? This is also a way of praising the verses of the Quran to show that the thing is of high standard. It's like when you find a kid or a young boy who doesn't really know culture, and then he steps in the a celebration that he takes up the mic that he's going to recite praises for the king. Of course, in our cultural settings, it will be seen as arrogance. It will be seen as a display of disrespect. So that is what Imam Busiri is telling himself. Like, how impudent. فَمَا تَطَاوُلُ آمَالِ الْمَدِيحِ, the hopes of a madih. Yani he feels like this is just a hope. This is not even a work. This is he expressing his hope of trying to praise the Quran. How impudent of his hopes towards praising the Quran. Then he says, آيات حق من الرحمن محدثة, one of my favorite portions of the whole Burdah. آيات حق من الرحمن محدثة قديمة صفة الموصوف بالقدم لم تقترن بزمان وهي تخبرنا عن المعاد وعن عاد وعن إرم دامت لدينا ففاقت كل معجزة من النبيين إذ جاءت ولم تدم. Normally these three abiyat, I admire them so much. He says, آيات حق, verses of truth, من الرحمن, from the merciful Lord, muhdathatun, they are new, the verses are fresh. Qadimatun, and they are old, the verses are new and they are old. Sifatul mawsufu bil kidami, these verses, they are a sifa, as we all know of the incidents of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal when he was forced to say that the Quran is makhluk, and he stick to the fact that no, Quran is sifa min sifat Allah, and so it's not makhluk. The moment he says it's makhluk, it will mean that there was a point in time where Allah was there and his kalam was not there. And so that is what Imam Busiri, that idea is what he's reflecting here. Qadimatun sifatul mawsuf, these ayat, they are a sifa of al-mawsuf bil qidam, the one that is being described with antiquity or being described with ancientness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one هو الذي كان ولم يكن شيئا يعني. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Qadim. And so he describes it as being new and as well being old. So we find in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anbiya verse number 2, I think, وَمَا يَأْتِيهِمْ مِنْ ذِكْرٍ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ muhdathun illa istama'uhu wa hum yal'abun. Yani whenever the remembrance, the verses of Allah comes to them fresh, muhdathun, they listen to it whilst playing. We as well have in Surah Al-Shu'ara verse number 5, they almost the same kind of verse, وَمَا يَأْتِيهِمْ مِنْ ذِكْرٍ مِنَ الرَّحْمَنِ here. وَمَا يَأْتِيهِمْ مِنْ ذِكْرٍ مِنَ الرَّحْمَنِ مُحْدَثٌ إِلَّا كَانُوا عَنْهُ مُعْرِضِينَ. So we find the Quran itself describing the verses as being muhdath. Yani it is fresh. Anytime you read the Quran, it is fresh. And so it describes it as such. And of course, being a sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it is qadim. Okay. And then he says, لَمْ تَقْتَرِنْ بِزَمَانٍ. These verses, they are not related to a specific time. وَهِيَ تُخْبِرُنَا But then it informs us anil ma'adi. It informs us of our hereafter. أي معاد بمعنى مكان العود حيث سنعود, where we will return to. عن المعاد وعن عاد, and it informs us as well as the people of Ad. وعن إرم, and the people of Iram. The people of Iram are also known as the Adan al-Ukhra. I think we have in the Quran the Adan al-Ula, which is the first Ad that he mentions, وعن عاد. As he says, وَأَنَّهُ, in the Quran we have وَأَنَّهُ أَهْلَكَ عَادًا الْأُولَى, Surah Al-Najm, verse number 50. وَأَنَّهُ أَهْلَكَ عَادًا الْأُولَى. عَادًا الْأُولَى is the وَعَنْ عَادٍ. We as well read in the Quran where we have وَإِلَىٰ عَادٍ أَخَاهُمْ هُودًا قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مَا لَكُمْ مِنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ أَفَلَا تَتَّقُونَ. You have أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِعَادٍ. Look at this one, and it continues, Surah Al-Fajr. إِرَمَ ذَاتِ الْإِمَادِ. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِعَادٍ. Then he says إِرَمَ ذَاتِ الْإِمَادِ. So the Iram, they are the Ad here in Surah Al-Fajr. The Ad in Surah Al-Fajr is the Adan al-Ukhra. That is what we call the Iram. It seems to be a family lineage, like the grandfather is Iram, the children come in the lineage, we have Ad in there. So the Ad is the Adan al-Ula, and the Iram is the Adan al-Ukhra. So the Quran is not related to a specific time, but it informs us of our hereafter, which is ahead of us, as well informs us of the people of Ad who came before us, and the Iram, they all came before us. It tells us of what has passed us, it tells us of what is ahead of us. It says, دامت لدينا, أي دامت هذه الآيات لدينا. These verses, they have persisted with us. ففاقت كل معجزة, and every other mu'jiza, the Quran, the verses of the Quran surpassed it. Every other miracle, the verses of the Quran surpassed it. It crossed it in level. It outdid it. Then it says, من النبيين, أي كل معجزة من النبيين. Every other mu'jiza that came from the prophets, the ayat of the Quran surpassed it in terms of the miracle. It says, إذ جاءت ولم تدمي, أي ففاقت كل معجزة من النبيين إذ جاءت ولم تدمي. When they came, their miracles came, but it didn't persist. Jamil. Then he says, محكمات فما تبقين من شبه لذي شقاق وما تبغين من حكم. It says محكمات, أي هذه الآيات محكمات بمعنى محكمات, بمعنى they've been perfected and sealed. You don't do any editing in there. فَمَا تُبْقِينَ مِنْ شُبَهٍ, it does not leave any room for shubah, any room for any vagueness, any confusion, so that لِذِي شِقَاقٍ, for conflict, for confusion. The Quran doesn't leave any space for confusion where you read and you don't get it. Why is it the text is some way? No, it doesn't leave room for any shubah. So that لذي شقاق, so that there is khilaf and niza', there is disturbance and there is niza', conflict. No, it doesn't do that. وما تبغين من حكم, أي this ayat, ما تبغين من حكم, أي لا تحتاج إلى من يحكم عليها. The ayat does not need anyone to come and judge it that it is good or bad, or no. Hakim is a referee. The Quran verses doesn't need a referee. It's good on its own. It speaks for itself. As we say in our local parlance, tree at the panettone. You don't have to market it. It markets itself. And we see that obviously. We see people reading the Quran, even from the translation, by themselves, and they come to embrace Islam. It says, ما هُرِبَتْ قَطُّ إِلَّا عَادَ مِنْ حَرْبٍ أَعْدَى الْأَعَادِ إِلَيْهَا مُلْقِيَ السَّلَمِ. He says the Quran has never been fought. ما حُرِبَتْ قَطُّ. The Quran has never been fought. إِلَّا, except that عَادَ مِنْ حَرْبٍ أَعْدَى الْأَعَادِ. The أَعْدَى here, أَعْدَى الْأَعَادِ is the fa'il of the أَعْدَى. So let's rearrange. إِلَّا عَادَ أَعْدَى الْأَعَادِ min harabin. So the most worst of enemy, when they fight the Quran, they turn back. إِلَيْهَا مُلْقِيَ السَّلَمِ, and they throw the flag of peace, or they throw in they throw in they smoke the peace pipe with the Quran, like they give up, they surrender. The worst of enemies of the Quran, or the worst of enemies of Islam, when they fight it, you find them finally surrendering. And we've seen this in the era of the Prophet ﷺ, stories of where the kuffar, they will go listen to portions of the Quran, they will come and they will say, nah, this is not a sihr, this is just something else amazing. Then he says, Raddat balagatuha da'wa mu'aridiha. The balagha of the Quran has thrown out, has pushed back, raddat, it has pushed back the balagha, and in the science of rhetoric of the Quran. The Quran has this its own beauty. Balagha, that is the beauty in meaning, the beauty in meaning of the words. So the balagha of the Quran has in itself pushed back the claims of the mu'aridiha. The mu'arid here could mean the opponent. When we say mu'arid, we mean the opponent of somebody. Radd al-ghayuri, the way a person who is so interested in his wife or something would turn back the hand, yad al-jani, the hand of a criminal, anil hurami, from a woman. Al-huram bimana jam'u hurma, then that is the woman, yani your wife. Your wife is your haram, she's your sanctuary. So the way when somebody is going to touch your wife, you push their hand back. That is how the Quran, the beautiful meanings of the Quran, pushes away da'wa mu'aridiha, the claims of its opponents. And also there is something about the mu'arid here that we need to know, since it is abiyat that we are talking about. When they say arada shi'r, arada fulanun ash-shi'ra, you have a qasida on some particular pattern, and the same meter that you used to write, somebody replies you in that same meter, but he turns the meaning that you gave. So let's say you say, oh, she's beautiful, where she has this line, and then somebody picks it and goes with the same meter, but saying she's ugly, she's that. So they kind of go the opposite way you went, but on the same meter. They call it al-mu'arada in the share. Example of it, there's some abiyat that they call the al-khamriyat, abiyat about alcohol. So they used to write about alcohol and drinking alcohol. Those abiyat, I think, has been gathered into one material, al-khamriyat. In there, the one poet has said that إذا الإشرون من شعبان ولت فواصل شرب ليلك بالنهار ولا تشرب بأقداح سجار فقد ضاق الزمان على الصغار. The poet is saying that whenever it is 20th of Shaban, إذا الإشرون من شعبان ولت, whenever 20th of Shaban comes, so you are on 21st and all that, then فواصل شرب ليلك بالنهار, the night drinking that you do, the drinking that you do at night, wasil bin nahari, drink it till daytime. Wala tashrab bi aqdahi sigarin, don't drink with small cups and small containers. No, because the small boys and the small daqa zamanu ala sigari, the era has taken over them. They are not able to. The era has taken dominion over them. So drink well. And it is reported of Sheikh Ibrahim Inyas al-Qawlih that he has done mu'arada of this poem, of this abiyat. So in his version he says that إِذَا الْإِشْرُونَ مِنْ شَعْبَانِ وَلَّتْ فَوَاصِلْ ذِكْرَ لَيْلِكَ بِالنَّهَارِ. Instead of شُرْبَ لَيْلِكَ, instead of your drink at night, he says ذِكْرَ لَيْلِكَ. So if whenever it is Ishrin, 20th of Shaban and counting, the dhikr you do at night, wasil bin nahari, continue till daytime. Wala tajlis ila qawmin sigarin, and don't sit with the small people here, not in age, but people who don't have understanding and knowledge of life. Don't sit with them. La tajlis ila qawmin sigarin faqad daqa az-zamanu ala as-sigari, because the era has overpowered the sigar, those who are small in terms of intellect. So you can see the mu'arada. As this one, he says, إِذَا الْإِشْرُونَ مِنْ شَعْبَانِ وَلَّتْ فَوَاصِلْ شُرْبَ لَيْلِكَ بِالنَّهَارِ. This one is saying, إِذَا الْإِشْرُونَ مِنْ شَعْبَانِ وَلَّتْ فَوَاصِلْ ذِكْرَ لَيْلِكَ بِالنَّهَارِ. As this one is saying, وَلَا تَشْرَبْ بِأَقْدَاهٍ صِغَارٍ, don't drink with small containers. This one is saying لا ولا تجلس إلى قوم صغار. So that is the mu'arada. Jamil. Back to our text. Imam says that لها معان. So that is for the mu'arada. Says لها معان كموج البحر في مدد وفوق جوهره في الحسن والقيم. Says the ayat of the Quran, it has meanings. These meanings are like the waves of the sea. The waves of the sea. كموج البحر في مدد, in terms of supply. The way the waves of the sea, I don't know if we can measure them, the quantity. It's just in abundance. That is how the meanings of the Quran come, in abundance. And then he says وفوق أي بمعنى ولها معان فوق جوهره. It has meanings that are فوق جوهر البحر في الحسن. The Quran has meanings that surpass the beauty of the pearls of the sea. You know, we find beautiful stones under the sea. The Quran has meanings that are beautiful than it. Fil husni, in terms of husn, the Quran surpasses those pearls. Wal qiyami, and in terms of qima, value, the Quran versus the meanings there, they surpass the pearls found in the sea. And then he says, فَمَا تُعَدُّ وَلَا تُحْصَى أَجَائِبُهَا وَلَا تُسَامُ عَلَى الْإِكْثَارِ بِالسَّأَمِ. The ajaib of the Quran, the amazing things about the Quran, لا تعد ولا تحصى. You cannot count them. You cannot put a figure to them. ولا تسام على الإكثار بالسأم. You don't ever get fed up. أي لا تمل منه. لا تمل من إكثار من القرآن. When you read the Quran more, you don't get fed up with it. لا تسام على الإكثار, يعني you don't get fed up with it بالسأم, with boredom. Jamil. And then Imam says that قرت بها عين قاريها فقلت له لقد زفرت بحبل الله فاعتصمي. Says قرت بها عين قاريها, أي قرة بمعنى أي قرت بها عين قاريها, عفوا قرت بها عين قاريها. The eyes of the reciter of the Quran is cooled by the verses of the Quran. When we say qarra bimana, to become cold, but that it's in the meaning of to get sakina, to get tranquility and comfort. So the one reading the Quran, his eyes enjoy some comfort. And so I said to the person reading the Quran, لَقَدْ زَفِرْتَ أي لَقَدْ فُزْتَ بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. Indeed, you've been successful with the hablullah, the rope of Allah. فَأَعْتَصِمِ, and so hold on to it well. As the Quran tells us, فَأَعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah and do not separate. So here he says that when he sees somebody reciting the Quran, the person is calm, is happy, the Quran is giving him comfort. He says this is the hablullah that Allah asks us to hold on to. So he tells the person that you've won, you've succeeded with the rope of Allah, and so hold on well. فَأَعْتَصِمِ. Says إِن تَتْلُهَا خِيفَةً مِّنْ حَرِّ نَارِ لَظَى. If you recite the verses of the Quran, khifatan, in fear of the fire of nari laza, from the heat, min harri, from the heat of nari laza, from the blazing fire. That is the hell hereafter, the hellfire. Atfa taharra laza, you quench the heat of the blazing fire. Min wirdi hashabimi, from the wird. When we say wird bimana here mawrid, yani the entry point of the Quran is cold. Ash-shabimi, that is cold. أي من مدخلها البارد. من مدخلها البارد. The moment you recite the Quran for the fear of the fire of the hereafter, the hellfire, you quench by the Quran, by the cold verses of the Quran, you quench the heat of the fire of the hereafter. And then he says, كأنها الحوض تبيض الوجوه به من العصاة وقد جاءوه كالحمم. As if it is the pond, حوض, pond, تبيض الوجوه, the pond in the hereafter, تبيض الوجوه به, that whitens people's face. When somebody comes to it ugly, dark, the pond brightens your face. من العصاة وقد جاءوه كالحمم, among the sinners who would have come to it like coal. الحمم جمع حمة, يعني فحمة. فحمة is coal, and it's the same as humma. The jam'u is humam. So he said that in the hereafter, the sinners, when some sinners are in the hellfire, they've been bent, they are being removed to be brought to Al-Jannah. When they are removed, they've been bent like coal, and they are taken through the pond, and the pond washes them up, and they are looking all bright. That is what he's describing the ayat of the Quran with. That the ayat of the Quran is like that pond that brightens the face of sinners after they've been bent to like coals. It says وَكَالصِّرَاطِ وَكَالْمِيزَانِ مَعْدَلَةً فَالْقِسْطُ مِنْ غَيْرِهَا فِي النَّاسِ لَمْ يَقُمِ. Says it is like the sirat, the path we will take to Jannah. وَكَالْمِيزَانِ, and like the meter of judgment in the hereafter. These two are very decisive. The path is very thin and decisive. Likewise, the judgment meter of the hereafter is the most just. And then he says ma'adalatan. So the verses of the Quran in terms of being exact, being straight path, is like the sirat. And in terms of being very just, it's like the mizan. Ma'adalatan bimana adlan, in terms of justice. It says فَالْقِسْطُ, justice, min غَيْرِهَا, aside the Quran, fi nasi, among people, lam yakumi. You can't find justice aside the Quran among people. It can't work. It says لا تعجبن. No, it says لا تعجبن لحسود راح ينكرها. Do not be amazed by somebody who is envious, who goes about refuting the Quran. راح أي ذهب في الناس ينكر القرآن, ينكر فضل القرآن. Somebody goes among the people and tries to say the Quran is this, the Quran is no. لا تعجبن, don't be amazed, don't be shocked, don't be shocked. راح ينكرها تجاهلا, he is trying to disregard it. وهو عين الهاذك, but this person is very smart. أي وهو عين الماهر, he is a very smart person. في الفهم in وهو عين الحازق الفهم عفوا, and this person is a smart and well versed person. He understands very well. And you see somebody, this person should know better about the Quran, but he's going about refuting the Quran. He said, don't be shocked, don't be shocked. Why is Imam telling us not to be shocked? He says قد تنكر العين ضوء الشمس من رمد وينكر الفم طعم الماء من سقم. Says at times you find the eye refuting the brightness of the sun. Somebody will say, the sun is not bright, but it is due to ramad. Ramad is sore eye. They call it ophthalmia. Ophthalmia. That is the eye. You find that it's an injury on the eye. So when they look at the sun, they don't even see any sunlight. So when such a person tells you that the sun is not bright, why are you shocked? Don't be shocked. The person is sick. وَيُنْكِرُ الْفَمُ, and at times you find the mouth refusing طَعْمَ الْمَاءِ, refusing the taste of water, min saqami, due to sickness. Somebody is sick, you give them water and they are like, this water tastes very bad. Meanwhile, you are giving them a very nice water, very pure water from spring. But they will tell you, the water is tasting very sour. What's this? But what is wrong with them? They are sick. It says min saqami, due to sickness. So he telling us لا تعجبن, he's telling us لا تعجبن لأنه يعني أحيانا تنكر العين هكذا وينكر الفم أيضا هذا فلا تعجبن. So don't be shocked. This is the al-Fasl al-Sadis, and we pray Allah strengthens us to keep on like this till we finish the material. In the next episode we look at al-Fasl al-Sabi' في إسراء ومعراجه صلى الله عليه وسلم. May Allah aid us through. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. يا رب موسى وهارون وعيسى محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. أكرمنا بقوة الحفظ والفهم والمعرفة والحكمة. آمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.